It is possible once you've created an if-else statement to extend it so you end up with more than one if condition. So you can see the one that I've written here. It's very similar to the one we had previously, but this time it has two conditions. This time, if user height is less than 1, we get the message, you're too short. But I've added this extra line here, which stands for else if. So it's not else, it's if again. So if, else if, then else. So that's the structure. Now you can have more than one else if. You can have as many as you like, as long as it makes sense in the program. So this one is basically saying, if you're smaller than 1 meter, tell us we're too short. Or if we are taller than or equal to 2 meters, we're too tall. And then anything else is covered in the else statement, which means we don't fit in either of those categories, which means we're not too short, we're not too tall, which means we're good to ride. So you have to think through the conditions, you have to think through what your if and else if and your else are going to be. But this is pretty much how it works. Now, when I run the program, you can see it's asking me, how tall am I? If I put in a number that is less than 1, it tells me that I'm too short. If I put in a number that is greater than 2, it tells me that I am too tall. And if I put in a number that is somewhere between 1 and 2, then I'm good to ride. And that's pretty much how it works. Now you'll notice every time I wanted to run this if statement, I had to keep pressing run, because when it gets to the print message, the program ends. Now there is a way that you can make this kind of loop, and you basically put it in a function, and then when you get to the end of the function, you call the function again, and that's called recursion. So if I define here a function, I'll just call it height checker. Now remember, we define a function by typing def, the name of the function, open close brackets, and then a colon. Now, don't forget, we need those spaces. So we need to basically move all of these in 4 spaces, because if needs 4 spaces, else if needs 4 spaces. Each print inside the if needs the 4 spaces. So this is how Python knows what to do with the code. And you'll just get used to where these spaces go. So you can see all I've done here is I've defined a function and I've just pushed everything along 4 spaces. So it looks the same as it did before. It's just now inside that function. Now, if you remember what we did before, we then had to tell it that we wanted it to run the function by basically typing in the name of the function. Now, when I press the run button, it works exactly the same as it did before. And once it's ran through the if statement and figured out which one fits the criteria, it prints the relevant message. But we want it to not stop at this point, but just allow us to run the whole thing again. So what we can do at the end is just basically run the whole thing again. So we're just telling the function to run the function again. So this time it will run through this code. Then it will jump down to here, run height checker, jump to the function, run all of this, and when it gets to the end, it jumps back up and runs all of this again. So you can see here, how tall are you? 5 meters, you're too tall. What we've done now, as you can see, is we've basically created what's known as an infinite loop. You don't want that. That's a bad thing generally, because you can see it just keeps doing the same thing basically over and over and over again. So that's not something you really want. Okay, what I need to do, I think, is put this inside. Okay, so I want the whole thing to go back to the beginning. So I'm going to pop this also inside here. So this time when it goes back to the beginning, it runs the whole program from the beginning again. So how tall are you? 6 meters. You're too tall. And then it goes back to the beginning. How tall are you? In meters. You can see these two lines here are a little bit too close together, but I can easily fix that just by adding a slash n at the beginning there, or I could do it at the end, and then this time when I run it, okay, how tall are you in meters? 3 meters. You are too tall, and then it runs the whole thing again. When it gets to this height checker point here, it's just running, it's just going back to the beginning. Okay, so avoid those infinite loops because they are bad. But it's a good exercise in knowing where to put the lines of code. Which bits do you want to run again? Which bits do you, at what point do you want it to stop running that recursion so it's not running it infinitely? You'll find that when we get to for loops and while loops, the same danger appears there, where you can, if you're not careful, end up creating a loop that just goes on and on and on and on forever. But there are ways to prevent that from happening.